Right, object styles. Before we begin, go to Windows, Workspace, make sure we're on Essentials, and then reset the Essentials. Collapse any palettes that might open, and then go to File, Open, and we're after the hats.indv. Now what we're going to do is place 3 images, one in here, and one in here. Then blocks of colour here, here, and here. So there's already the guidelines indicating where we're going to place everything. So to begin with, do File, Place, and find the hats1.jpg and select Open. If you can place it by simply drawing now a frame to where you want the image to be placed. So I'm going to start from the guidelines up here and drag all the way down to the first guideline, the first blue guideline, and let go. Now I'm going to use my selection tool to resize the frame. So I'm going to drag the frame in to the middle guideline, the guideline between the gutter here between the 2 columns. Then I'm going to drag my image across until it's in the right area. Next up, I'm going to click off the image and do File, Place. Now the reason why I said click off the image, I should explain that. This is an error that will happen a lot of times. Some people have something selected and they will go File, Place, select an image, do Open, and think, oh, where's, I can't place it, and what's happened? Control Z to undo if you did that, and press Escape to get rid of that loaded icon. If you have something selected by default in InDesign and do File, Place, it goes into that object. So a good thing to do is remember to click off. File, Place, or turn off this option here, Place Selected Item. So most students, I recommend they turn this off. So what we're after now is hats 2. But if you hold the Control key down and also click hats 3, we're going to place both at the same time and do Open. Again, from the top intersection here of the guideline to the margin, draw a box down to the first guideline. Now we've got our next image all ready to come in, and then we do it from the intersection of these 2 blue guidelines down to the bottom margin guideline. Make sure we have our selection tool selected, and again we're going to crop like this one, so select one, crop to the margin, select the other, crop to the guideline. So we have our 3 images in. This image looks fine, this one obviously needs to move over, so select it once, move the cursor to the middle and drag it across like so until you get it how you think looks good. Next up, we're going to draw a solid block of colour here, here and here. To do this, we're going to use the rectangle tool. So I'm selecting the rectangle tool, and by default when you draw a rectangle it usually comes with a black stroke applied and no fill. Remember, no fill means transparency. Double click the hand tool to zoom back out. Pressing delete to delete the selection. Now, I've selected my rectangle tool, and obviously I don't want just black, we want solid colour. So let me expand this. Now we have a stroke, so we want no stroke, so with the stroke selected, we click none. Select the fill, and if I double click on the fill, we can now select a colour. So I'm going to select a pastel-y sort of blue, that'll do, and then draw my rectangle. I'm going to click off, make sure there's nothing selected, go back to my rectangle tool. Remember, this is not the rectangle frame tool, this is the rectangle tool, 2 different things. This time I'm going to select a colour up here to begin with. So I'm double clicking and I'm going to change this range and then go for a nice pastel pink. And I'm going to add this one to my CMYK swatch. And then do OK. So withdraw my rectangle, fill in the gap. Then again, I'm going to click off, select my rectangle tool, and go to my swatches this time. We're going to define a new colour in the swatches. Now you can see the colour we just added to the CMYK swatch is here, this one. So for example, if we double click on here and change it, turn on the preview, you can see it's changing in here. Obviously we don't want to do that, I'm quite happy with that colour, so I'm going to click cancel. But I am going to define a new swatch. So I click here to define a new swatch. I will double click on that swatch and make a colour that opens. So I'm going to make a bit of a yellowy colour this time round, and then click OK. Worth noting is this, name with colour value. If you look at all the colours in the swatches here, they're all named CMYK with different values. So that's the value that makes up that colour. So that's the default way of naming colours within InDesign. But you can put names in if you wanted to. So if it's a specific colour you're making for someone, you could just put the name in there rather than the colour values. That is up to you. And if you do OK. So we're going to draw our last rectangle, which we have rectangle tool selected, into the corresponding space. Now we're going to make an object style. For example, if we wanted to make a style to apply to each one of these frames, we would have to do it manually by default on each one, which obviously creates more effort, more work. So for example, if I wanted to add a stroke to this frame, I'd select the frame, make sure I've got my stroke selected, add a colour. So in this example we'll do blue, actually we'll do black so it'll be visible. Add a weight to that stroke of whatever. And then if I wanted to add an effect, for example, actually that weight's a bit too high. If you want to add an effect, we would then go to effects, add a feather, so for example, or I don't know, maybe 25 millimeters, do OK. And there we go, we've got an effect and a style sort of thing going on. And then we'd want to add it to this one, this one, this one, so we have to do all that again and again and again. So I'm going to Control Z that, get it back to what we was. What we do is make an object style, which are very similar to character styles and paragraph styles, but they affect the object. So Windows, Style, Object Styles. Right, to begin with, I'm going to make a new style. There's an extra one in mind from where I've been playing around before, but I'm going to make a new one. It's going to call it Object Style number 2. Yours should say Object Style number 1. Double click it and rename it. I'm going to call this Stroke and Feather. To begin with, I'm going to disable all the options here. So I'm going to turn off transparency and all the rest. I'm going to ignore this because that doesn't matter for now, and make sure preview is turned on. So I'm going to go to my stroke, make sure it's back on, click the stroke, and we're going to set a stroke of paper. Now, just for, if you didn't know, paper is not a colour, remember, it is the colour of the paper behind. So a weight, I think 15 would do, but there's none in the drop down list, so I'm going to actually type 15 in here, press return. So it's added a stroke all the way around. But as you know, I want to add a feather as well, so I'm going to double click on my stroke and feather, come back into effects and add a basic feather. And a feather of, say, 15 again, millimeters. Yeah, okay. And there's the effect. Now I'm going to add that to the rest of these ones. To do that, I'm going to simply select them all by drawing a marquee around the whole page and add or click on my stroke and feather. And then it's simply added to the lot. Now if I click off, so nothing's selected here, remember, and I'm going to double click on my stroke and feather, and I'm going to go to basic feather, and I'm going to change this. I'm going to change this to 20 this time. And tab to the next one, see what it looks like. I still want it to be harsher than that, so I'm actually going to change this right up to 25, press enter, and there we go. This is more the effect I'm kind of after. So I'm going to check my preview, and there we go. A very basic introduction to object styles. Very powerful, very, very easy to use.